So, with no further ado, let's bring him up. Ladies and gentlemen, Cody McAuliffe.
How many people know who I am? A couple of people. That's good. What's my name? Click is not going to work. It's going to be fun. Hi everyone, I'm your resident arsehole. And today, we're going to talk about stress. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Cody McAuliffe, and I specialize in mindset coaching for people. And the way that I do that is I test people's genetics to understand how their brain works differently to other people to move them forward at the fastest rate so they can ultimately become superhuman. So what is stress? Any ideas? How would you define stress? An uncomfortable situation. What else?
An uncomfortable feeling.
An uncomfortable feeling. Yeah, cool. What else?
Necessary.
Necessary. Interesting.
Lack of control.
Forward thinking, lack of control,
Physiological response.
physiological response,
Overload.
overwhelm,
What to run away from?
something to run away from,
An imbalance.
an imbalance. Stimulation. There we go. Stress is only ever stimulus. Stress is inherently required for us to grow. When we're exercising, we're stressing our body. When we're in business, we're being stimulated, we're being stressed. So when we think about this stress, we really want to think about how we relate to stress, because stress is inherently required for us. Most of the time, we avoid stress at all costs. And yet, it is the thing that allows us to grow. We have the avoidance of the thing which allows us to grow. It's not very smart. So as we look at the different stages of development, so some of you will have seen this before, we have 8 different stages of development that we talk about with people. We've got depression over here. We've got someone who's going along for the ride, a drifter. We've got someone who's dreaming about things and yet not taking any action on it. We've got someone who's having life show up by default. They're not getting the results they want. We've got someone over here who's a driver who's forcing everything and getting the results that they want only at the cost of their health. We've got someone who can get into flow on demand, which means they actually become in demand. This is personal flow. We have a designer over here, someone who's living their life by design. This is where we get into team or interpersonal flow. This is the level of true leadership. I noticed a massive trend in terms of the questions on day one for the second years of how many people are good managers but shit leaders. You might be able to get into flow yourself, and when you can get your team into flow, the results become exponential. We look at the director level, which is what we call transpersonal flow, where it transcends the requirement for you, transcends your physical life. It's no longer about you, it's about what you've created, which creates a life of its own going forward. That's the legacy piece. And we need to understand the difference between creating a legacy and creating impact. Because we all create an impact, and yet very few people will create a legacy. So what we get to look at is understanding where do we sit on this scale, and how do we relate to stress based on where we're at on this scale. Because we're going to avoid it on the left side over here. We're going to be coming from a place of force on the left side here, and we're going to be coming from a place of flow. For when we're in flow, stress is stimulus. It is no longer something to be avoided. It is something to be embraced. It's something that can fuel us. Fuel us with abundant energy. Or we can come from a low level stage, which means that we're driven by fear, we're driven by scarcity. How we relate to stress or even stimulus determines the results that we're going to get in our life. We get to determine what that stage currently is, and that's going to change over a period of time. It's going to change on a moment-by-moment basis. This is going to fluctuate again and again. And if we want to change the results that we get in our life, then what we really need to do is change how we associate with stress. So one of the things that I consistently do is map out exactly where people are at on that scale. Because all of those sections of depression, drift up, have certain thought processes. So people consistently ask me, how do you know what's going on for me? How do you understand what my thoughts are? Well, I use this framework unconsciously to determine exactly where you sit. If you want a copy of that, I'll send you a PDF of the actual things so you can actually do it, so it's going to be better than taking photos. Just remind me at the end, because I'm horrible at remembering things. So just remind me. That's on you guys. Take responsibility for that. So you're going to sit at one of these stages. Up here, you're going to have too many balls in the air, you're going to have no time left, and you've gotten the results that you wanted, but it's not what you thought. Down here, you're thinking about doing things, but you're not actually taking action. Instantly, we start to understand where you're at based on the thoughts that you have, based on the language that you use. Because the truth of the matter is, you highlight more than you think. Your physiology tells more than you think. So what we really want to do is we want to go from these lower stages of forcing everything, of using fear and scarcity to drive us forward. Yes, we can get some results doing that, only at the cost of burnout or frustration. So what if we could start to let go of using force and start to use flow in everything we did? How much would that impact you? How much would that change the scope of your business? Not at all? A little bit? A lot? I don't know. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you guys. This is a conversation. So that means that you need to talk to me. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk to myself like I normally do, like a crazy person. But I'm crazy and I'm okay with that. So how much would that change your business?
A lot.
A lot. So who thinks that getting more flow in their business would get them better results? Awesome, thank you. This is ultimately what it's all about. How much would that impact you? How much would that change the scope of your business? Not at all. A little bit. A lot. I don't know. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you guys. This is a conversation. So that means that you need to talk to me. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk to myself like I normally do, like a crazy person. But I'm crazy and I'm okay with that. So how much would that change your business?
A lot.
A lot. So who thinks that getting more flow in their business would get them better results? Awesome, thank you. This is ultimately what it's all about. And it comes down to what does that say?
You make it into me.
That's just jumbled letters. But inherently we jump to conclusions. Inherently we already have the answer, even with partial information. Inherently we filter our entire experience through things that we've already experienced. So we start to actually recreate those things. We recreate that addiction to driving our business through force. So what if it didn't have to be that way? Would you want to find out about that? Yeah. Who's that one person we just had a private conversation with? No? No one else wants to know?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes!
So, what we need to determine is what we're really talking about when we talk about stress. Because there's a chain of actions which occur before it gets to the label stress. That's the end point. We need to take a step back to go, what's the first thing? Because the labeling comes later. That's a symptom. What's the cause? We need to know the chain of events in our mind which occurs so that we can actually go back to that starting point. When we go back to that starting point, then we can actually work on the thing that actually creates change rather than playing in symptoms over here. Make sense? I'm going to ask if it makes sense a lot today. You'll understand why. So, this is how it works. Most of you are avoiding things which are uncomfortable in your business, which is what happens over here. So as we start to look back, we start to look at, all right, something's been triggered within you that means that you automatically avoid it, because when you went through that sensation in the past, that's what you did. And the reason why it triggered you is because it's not safe. And once we determined that it was not safe, we look at, well, what was not safe? Well, that was a sensation. It was a feeling or a sensation in your body, which you then labeled as not safe. I don't want to experience this. This is a trigger. I'm agitated. I don't like this. So I'm going to avoid it. Do you know what humans really are? Pleasure junkies. Just give me that pleasure. Get me up. Come on, give me another hit. It's like, give me a hit of getting a new client. Give me a hit of exercise. Give me like a hit of drugs even. It's still the same thing. It's still this pursuit, this endless pursuit of pleasure.
And avoidance of peace law.
Yeah, and avoidance is the symptom. The reality is, any sensation in our body could be determined as stimulus. Our labeling of that determines our result with it. Now, if something was safe, and we're talking about the context of support here, and the reason why we talk about the context of support is because most people are unwilling to receive support. So if we want to be able to receive support, then we need to be receptive. We need to actually feel safe. Because our level of safety will determine our level of receptivity. Who wants to earn more money in their business? Well, if money is the energy of support, then you will only hold on to however much money is safe for you to hold on to. Because either you won't earn it, or you'll unconsciously find ways to get rid of it. Because a sensation will come up in your body, and you'll go, fuck that shit. But you won't even notice it, because it's so subtle. So, let's play the first game of many. I want you to think about your bank account right now. Thinking about what that number is. Your bank account. And then I just want you to just start to create awareness around the sensations that come up for you as you see that number starting to drop down. Dropping down further and further, further and further, further and further. And noticing what's happening in your body. And noticing how that stimulus is starting to change, even though nothing has actually changed. You're just thinking about it, and noticing as it goes down to zero, and noticing as it goes below zero, noticing those sensations, noticing that avoidance of those sensations. And we start to see what really occurs for us. Because although your circumstances did not change, energetically, you just did. Based on our association to the energy of support or money. So naturally it's like, fuck, I do not want to experience that. I'm going to come from a place of force and I'm going to hustle for the rest of the year to hit my numbers. Which may work. And yet, you will only ever play that response out again and again and again. So what if we could change that? Do you want to hear about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we'll talk about that later. So a couple of people have talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I thought I'd put the slide in to actually create a deeper understanding of what that is. Because most people see it as the normal pyramid. When the reality is, it's more like this. When we think about needs of safety here, we can start to see how it peaks through here and then stays quite high through here. So the more that we expand what is safe for us, the more that we actually can hold on to and experience in our reality. So when it's safe for you to have money, safe for you to earn money, then that is what you get to experience. So your current results are only a representation of what is safe for you. So what if you could expand your energetic holding capacity? What if you could grow what that statement is around just money? Around what it means to be a success? What if we could expand that out? What if we could grow that? How much would that impact your life? One person has a leg. So, I need some support. Who would like to volunteer? Nikki, you should put a hand up first. This is going to be fun. We're just going to play a game. It's going to be a fun game. You're all going to play it in a second, but we're going to play it first. You probably played this game as a kid. So, very simple game. Just explain the rules. I don't even remember what it's called. I just call it like slaps. So this game, do you remember this? Yeah. Does anyone remember this game? So the rules are, I guess she's going first. So what we'll just create, one sec. Just create an awareness around this, and then I'm going to explain something to you, and then you're going to play the game and start to see something go on, right? So, continue.
Slap his face.
Yeah, it's a proper game.
But you're not moving.
He's just going to lash out at some point, isn't he? Yeah, he will.
So, how do you feel in your body?
Nervous?
Nervous? And I haven't even gone yet. She's stressed, and she's the one hitting me. Just notice that.
I must have gone.
I can go on. That's one, yeah, I've got three. How stressed are you now? Jules said otherwise.
Same, but competitive, trying to suss out your
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
Get willing to.
So now, even as she speaks, she's in that slightly wider state, right? So even in this simple little exercise, just a little game, we can highlight how quickly we get into a stress response. And there's two things that we can do. No. Two options. We're going to play again. We're all going to play. There's two options. You've got a fork in the road of what you choose to do. You can react or you can respond. A reaction is automatic. It's unconscious. Now, when your bank account went down in your mind, you had a reaction. You had a physiological reaction to that stimulus. As we started to play more, she started to respond. Because to start, it was like an instant reaction of stress. Because stimulus is going to come up for us in our lives. We can choose to consciously respond and make a choice to continue on regardless. Or we can choose to step back and avoid it. when we start to see it as stimulus, we start to step into it. We start to step into that discomfort. We can actually be with the sensations that are actually going on for us. We can be with that sensation of our bank account going down and not go back to having to force everything. We can come from a higher energetic state, which is going to create a completely different result for us. So, I'm going to get you to find a partner, and you're going to play slap. And what I want you to do is, I want you to create awareness around the sensations, because as the pain starts to increase, what do you do? So she moved her hands away when the pain started to increase. She reacted because we're trying to avoid that pain, that sensation. And when you're actually okay with it, because you know it's going to just pass, it's temporary, then you can actually be with it. But then she started to create a strategy of, oh, I'll take my hands away twice, I'm just going to take it from now. And then maybe I'll get one when he's been there long enough. Yeah?
Yeah.
Ah. Yeah, just like,
I have a question. How much of that is avoidance of the physical pain? How much of it is the competition, the psychological desire to win the competition?
yeah. What we're looking at is what our automatic reaction is. Because if we're competitive and we go into being competitive, then that could be a reaction for us. And is that something that serves us? We don't necessarily know. What if we could then actually respond? Because if it's automatic, we're not making that choice. Awareness creates choice. Because otherwise, that choice is made unconsciously. Already happened.
I'm ready to go.
Because if you're living your entire life
But it
needing
is.
to be competitive, at what cost? That can serve you to a point. And if you're unconsciously making it, then you won't move past that point. So when you make every choice yourself rather than unconsciously, then you take back your control. Make sense? So, grab a partner. Play the slap game. The natural question is, well, which one's better? Well, they're both actually required. A reaction is required in a life or death situation. That's what keeps us alive. And yet, when we live our entire life from fight, flight, freeze, please, of reacting, you're just going to get burnt out because it's going to take a lot of energy. So we need to react in certain times, and we get to choose to respond when it's not life or death. And yet we instantly go back into my bank account going down is life or death. And yet, even today, it will fluctuate. You can ride the fluctuations of that on a moment-by-moment basis. Or you can just be with the sensation that comes up around that. You can create a completely different context for you. The context of being with what is in an instance. Because the natural tendency for us is when we go into the avoidance is to find a coping mechanism. And we use coping mechanisms quite often to heal like what our inner child is going through. And this is what we do. We use adult coping mechanisms for something that our inner child wants. Got a little 5-year-old. Here you go, have some wine. Yeah, have some more money. Have some more success. Go exercise. Would you give a 5-year-old wine? And yet we all use that as a coping mechanism. All to avoid being with our thoughts. Or to distract ourselves from our thoughts. Because most of us are afraid of our thoughts. They're afraid of the sensations, or the labeling of all of those sensations. So we avoid them. Very few people can actually be with the silence. And when we can be with the silence, tension starts to disappear. We can be with our thoughts, and we actually start to experience them rather than change them all the time. When we can actually return to that experience of presence, of being with what is coming up for us on a sensation level, then we can choose to respond in that instance rather than react. So we all use these coping mechanisms. Some of them are healthier than others. The limitation with that is, as we start to use coping mechanisms, we start to create an experience of not feeling. So when we have an experience here and we look at a spectrum of sensations, we've got a pleasure-filled sensation, which is like a 4 here. It's enjoyable. And what that creates is a contrasting potential of a 4 here in terms of pain. And if you were to push this to a 5, then you could experience a different experience over here. And yet what we do as a coping mechanism is try and get back to 0. I've just got to get back to being functional, back to being numb, back to avoiding everything, which creates a cap on what is safe for us. And when we have a cap on what's safe for us, we unconsciously start to create that experience again and again and again. Stand up a second. And I feel like this.
To resist it.
So he asks, do you want me to resist it? He doesn't know, but he still resists it. So force creates counter force. I didn't have to tell him to resist, he automatically did. So when you try and come from force, or try and cope, or try and numb, all that creates is an oppositional energy. All it creates is the same thing playing out again and again, a looping process. That becomes what is our glass ceiling for our income, for our business, for our members. Because how many people here, you can sit down, thank you. How many people here know something that they could do in their business that they haven't done yet? Just raise your hand. Everyone. So the knowing doesn't change anything. What we get to look at is we would automatically take that action if it was safe to do so. If it was safe to be that person who would take that action. As we expand what is safe for us, everything starts to change. We start to experience whatever sensations are coming up for us, rather than trying to change them, trying to use a coping mechanism, trying to avoid them. or the more that we avoid what comes up for us, the more that we contract our experience. We go from up here, bring it together. And when we look at depression, depression is here. It's an experience of numbness. And then it goes here.
What about anxiety?
Anxiety is different because anxiety shows up in different ways to different people.
Yeah.
And again, you get to be with the sensation of that, because anxiety comes in paranoia or it comes in overthinking. Two slightly different processes, and that actually creates a highly functioning brain. So when you're actually with that sensation, you can channel that anxiety into something, and it creates a healthy expression of it. So when we look at depression, we're looking at the experiencing of the numbness of experience. Then people aren't actually feeling their feelings over a long period of time, which creates this numbness experience, which then creates oppositional energy and pushes it only to this end of the spectrum. Because they get to here and it's like, I don't want to experience this, so I need to go and find a numbing mechanism, I need to go and find some wine. So then we look at what are the coping mechanisms or distractions that we use. Because some of them are fun. Sex is fun. It's fun for me, I don't know about for you guys. Food is fun, yeah, I love that. Isolation, not so fun. Sleeping, love that. Social media, it's good. We've got unhealthy coping mechanisms, using self, others, self-harming. That's frowned upon. And yet, most of us sit over here. It's just a healthy coping mechanism. I remember, I love watching my journey of what my coping mechanisms have been. It's like, because I experience a lot of like social anxiety and experience depression in my life. So it goes from alcohol to drugs. Oh, that's not very good, so I become a bodybuilder and then just put all my time, energy and effort into strategically starving myself for months on end and training 20 to 30 hours a week, all just to avoid what's actually going on internally for me. No, that's unhealthy. I know what I'll do. Throw myself into my work. I use that as my coping mechanism to not be with my thoughts and be with what's coming up with me. I'll use exercise. You know what? I'll become a coach. Become a mindset coach. That'll save me doing my internal work. All just to avoid the sensations that are coming up. And when we actually be with those, we actually start to create the reality that we want to create, rather than consistently trying to change either our behavior or how we feel. Every person who has a conversation with me ultimately says, I want to change this behavior, or I want to feel differently, which is part of the problem. We can change those things 100%, and yet we're going to be back to the start. Because changing those things doesn't really change the thing that causes it all. So as we start to take a step back, what causes it all? Well, it comes back to our sensations in that instance. And the natural tendency for someone using a coping mechanism in business is interesting. They'll often say something like this: can't just do nothing. Can't do nothing. What does that create? Well, it creates, I'm just going to keep doing everything in my business for as long as I can, because then I can use it as a coping mechanism. Your business can be a coping mechanism, or it can be an expression of who you are as a person that creates an impact and a legacy in the world. Subtle difference, dramatic impact difference. So what if you could be with doing nothing for a period? Who was it this morning? Jackson this morning said, how much time are you taking just to like think? And multiple people have actually said that. How much time are you taking to do nothing for you to actually build up all of the energy for you to actually create? Because when we just go, force, all it does is just drains all of our energy. When we allow space and create space, we can actually create. If you want to build a house, you don't just like go, all right, I'm going to build a house in this room. You need an empty block, you need an empty space for which to create in. You need a vessel, you need a block of land. And yet we instantly just build that space, build that silence, build that experience of doing nothing in that instance. With what? With bullshit. It was hilarious at dinner, people talking about how I sit with them in silence a lot more, and they actually start to grow their ability to actually do that, and how the natural tendency is just to go, I'm just going to fill this space with meaningless bullshit, meaningless conversation. The weather's nice today, and yet you just fill that with nothingness, nothing that adds value. What if you could take a step back and be with that silence and allow that space for you to create something in, something that you want to create? Because you're consistently creating every single moment. You're creating your experience right now. Isn't it an experience that you want to create? You know that. So the question then is, what is it that you want to create? Because the strategy of doing something because you can't do nothing only creates a world of limitation. Make sense? Question?
Yeah, when it comes to doing nothing, I struggle with that big time.
Yeah. And the reason is because you can't do nothing.
No,
This is
and
the story.
the question is, what does nothing actually mean? Because if it's not work, or do I just sit there and do nothing at all? Because most of the times when we do have time, we then find, we have time for our hobbies, but that's again doing something.
Yeah.
So what's nothing?
Well, if we want to get down to the depths of it, doing nothing is just being with what's coming up for us. Is no longer needing to change it. Because you think about doing nothing as like I'm doing nothing right now. I'm being with the sensations that are coming up for me. And yet I'm still living my life. I'm still communicating. I'm not deep in my head of what everything is going on around me. I'm creating this experience of actually being present for what I'm actually experiencing and being. But the whole point is when you need to do something, it's a strategy. So what we get to step back into is, what if I could be? What if I could just be who I am? Because then I'm no longer trying to change how I'm seen. I'm no longer using all of this energy to push out this persona that I have to wear. Again, it's this subtle difference. Because the whole point here is, the story is, I can't just do nothing. Because if I do nothing, then what? How do I even do that? How do I is still in the doing component of it. Rather than what if I could just be with what is on a sensation level. What if I could be with what is when my bank account is going down? Or even I think about that. And then expanding that, what would happen if I could be with what is when my bank account has 10x'd? Because most people are afraid of what would happen if that actually occurred. They think they would lose friends. They think they would be even more subjected to tall poppy syndrome. So it's easier, it's safer, just to play small. Just to play in this little container that I've created for myself of what is safe. So when we look at this, this is the narrative that we buy into that keeps our coping mechanism in place. What if we could actually receive support? What if we could actually take on a big name? What if we could take on a team? What if we could step out of forcing all of those things and start to create that flow, that personal flow first, but then that interpersonal flow of how you respond to your team, to your family, to your intimate partner? What if you could get in flow with them? Would that make it easier? Because it's not about doing nothing because you're still in the same paradigm, which is a natural tendency. Because if we go back into the understanding of the different thought processes, you're still in doing here. This is still force. So what if you can just be with what's coming up if you want a sensation level? Well, then you're going to start to actually tap into flow. But if I can't just do nothing, it means that this is going to be passive. And our natural tendency for how our brain actually works is, all right, well, I want to have this perfect business. So what do I need to do? And you go and do things and you make it happen, and then you start to see results, and it's like, yeah, this is awesome. And then I'll be that person, right? Then I'll be a millionaire. And yet, what if we could actually flip that upside down and go, all right, well, who would I be if I already was that? Then I'd automatically take those actions. Then I'd have that result. This is how we start to create unconsciously. What we get to look at is it actually creating the thing that we want? Because it's ultimately just about the order of our thoughts, really. If we begin with the end of mind of who I would be, and we start with that, then we start to automatically take the actions, the doing of it. So your level of questioning determines your level of results. And when you ask, well, how do I do that then? It's just indicative of here. Right, well, how do I have that? And this is why you consistently ask, well, who are you? Because who you are and who you be determines the actions that you're going to take automatically. You can create a new strategy, a new process to go and do that, and you will start to get results from that. And what if you could start to attract those results to you by who you be, by your identity, by stepping out of the need to force everything? What if it could be effortless? It's a good question to ask. What if your business could be effortless? What if you could attract the people that you want to attract rather than the shit kickers that you don't even want to work with? What if you could attract those people by being who you are, by being the asshole that you are? Or whatever that shadow is for you, whether it's being a dick, whether it's being a C-bomb, which some people shared drinks last night. when we create this full expression of who we are, we start to magnetize people coming into us, rather than put on this persona, this act, to be seen a certain way. Because when we do that, we drop back into here. Because we're filtering everything through how we look. What is other people's perception of us? Because we need to look good and avoid looking bad. Makes sense? Tangent. So ultimately what we do is we live our entire life to create a strategy to cope rather than allow or be with a sensation that comes up for us. And the thing is, when you cope, all that you ever do is cope. So imagine you've got a thorn in your arm. This is what we do when we cope. We go, okay, I've got this thorn in my arm. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to create this little contraption here. It's going to go on here. And I'm good. I can live my life, because when I was walking around before, I was bumping into things, it was hurting. It was painful. So now I've got this contraption here, it's all good. In my life, it's awesome. Except then, like when I get into bed with my partner, she's like, what the fuck is that? Freak, like seriously, like what's this new thing you're doing? I'm like, oh, I've got this, check this out, I've got this thorn here. So I created this contraption to be able to do it. And she's like, you gotta get rid of that. I'm like, nah, that'll be fine. So keep it. I'm like, you know what, I need to make a better one. I'm gonna make a much better one. I'm gonna create this little air conditioning unit on this thing, this little battery pack. I'm just gonna charge it at night then. Create this battery pack, charge it up, good to go. Air conditioning, feels good, it's much smaller this time. And you're walking down the street one day and they go, some guy goes, what is that? Why do you have that? They're like, I've got this thorn in my arm. This thorn that really annoys me, so I created this contraption. He's like, oh my God, I've got a thorn too. We should start a business. And then you start to get all this media coverage. All of these people have thorns in their arms, and you've got this contraption to be able to save their entire life. And they're like, oh my God, my life has been changed by you. I can be in bed with my partner and not hurt my arm. And then someone comes along and just goes, oh, that hurt. And they went through the discomfort to create the completion of that, rather than creating an entire mechanism, an entire lifestyle around just coping. And this is what we often do. We create this entire lifestyle, this entire business around coping. Our business isn't an expression of who we are. It's an expression of who we want to be seen to be. And when it is actually an expression of who we are, then it becomes so much easier. We're no longer trying to hide all of these things. We've pulled out the thorn. We're no longer coping. We're actually living. Our business becomes that expression of how we're living our life. It becomes easy for us because we're no longer acting. So it's mind-blowing to think that this is what we all do, and yet we all do it. It's more important to cope than it is to go through the discomfort. The short-term discomfort, the short-term stress, the short-term stimulus. Because ultimately we're consistently trying to escape. So when we look at this, we look at pleasure, pain. When we only ever focus on getting pleasure, it creates a disconnection. Has anyone had like a shit day in the last year? Only everyone. What if you can just be with what comes up on that day, rather than actually repress it, suppress it, or project and say, gotta be positive though. Because we all believe that we need to be positive, and yet that's ultimately just a projection. Like, positivity is often bullshit, because it's often a mask to be seen a certain way. That's not to say that you need to be negative again, but we get to be with what is actually coming up for us, be with whatever the sensation is. Telling someone who's depressed to be positive, all they're going to do is say, fuck you. You don't get it. You don't understand. So what we get to look at is, right, we're going to cope by pushing things down, suppressing them. It's like, oh no, I'm just pushing it down for now. I don't want to go through it right now because I'm in front of people. I can't allow them to see me and what's actually going on for me. Or we do it unconsciously. We're not even aware that we're pushing it down. We're not even aware of the sensations in our body anymore. Because we've disconnected from them so much. We create projections. We need to create this story, this narrative of around, oh, they did this to me. I'm the victim of that. I blame that external thing. And the reality is based on the thoughts you've had inside of you. All just to escape. And when we let go of the need to escape, we can actually just be with what is. So we can actually start to be with the sensations of both pain and pleasure. And when we actually go back to the different labeling of that, when we actually start to go, this sensation previously was not safe. What if I could be with it anyway? Well, then we start to actually experience the shortened lifespan of that, because there's no longer any oppositional energy to it. There's no longer any holding in place with it. It has. We remove the looping process which has created that proverbial glass ceiling in our life for our experience. We can actually start to break through that because we're redefining and expanding what our energetic holding capacity is. We expand what that is. It creates a completely different reality for us. And when we do that, it means that we can actually start to make choices again of things that we didn't realize we were creating unconsciously. Awareness of our sensations creates a choice, because there will still be times where you react. There will be that time your partner pisses you off and you go, fuck you, what? Whether internally or externally, doesn't matter. The whole point is you can actually start to go, I reacted, and now I choose to respond. Because the biggest limitation is not the reaction. What is it?
Not recognizing it.
It's the reaction to the reaction. That's where the loop starts. So when we can be okay with reacting and then respond after that first reaction, that's where we start to really take our power back, because we don't loop. Reacting is part of life. And when we can respond to that reaction, and you might even get into the loop, and then you can choose to respond again. We get to shorten the lifespan of that experience though. We can shorten that lifespan of that experience. Then we may be triggered for moments compared to months. Because often we hold on to all of these things from the past. We hold on to the story of going bankrupt. We hold on to all of these different experiences that we've had of the past unconsciously. And when we experience sensations or moments, then they become complete. So it comes back to this ability to choose to respond, no matter how long you've reacted for. No matter how long you've reacted. Awareness creates choice. And you have that choice, that fork in the road, moment by moment. You have that option. Come on guys, let's like an awesome fun. Like seriously? Come on. I have fun anyway. Awareness creates choice. So what we get to do is we get to actually be with the sensations that come up for us, because that expands our energetic holding capacity. So what we're going to do now is, just going to get you to just close your eyes. Just bring your feet flat floor. Just bring consciousness to your breath. Awareness to your breath. And I want you to just be with that little part of you. That little part deep inside of you. That little part that just wants to be loved, just wants to be held, just wants to be felt, just wants to be seen, just wants to be heard. That little part of you that doesn't feel safe. That little part of you that just wants to be seen, just wants to be heard, just wants to be felt, just wants to be held, just wants to be loved. Just be with the sensations of that. Just noticing those sensations as they peak and trough, just going with those, just noticing those, just being with those. And starting to notice those sensations start to subside. And then we start to think about that part in terms of money. We notice the sensations of that part that says it's not safe to keep money, or to have money, or to earn money. We just be with those sensations. Just allow those sensations, just be with them. Allowing those sensations to be heard, to be felt, to be seen, to be held, and to be supported by you, from you to you. Just allowing those sensations to peak and trough, peak and trough. Just being with those and allowing those and expanding that energetic holding capacity and allowing you to start to feel safe, to experience that safety on an even deeper level, expanding that energetic holding capacity, just being with those sensations, just being with what's coming up for you in that moment, allowing it, allowing them to become seen, to become felt, to become heard, to become held, to become loved. Just allowing that part of you to return to being part of you, so that it no longer impacts you, so there's no longer any oppositional energy to that part, so that it's safe to have that part of you, so it's safe to be you, just the way you are. Safe to be who you are in your body right now. And as you take the learnings of all those sensations into your body now, starting to integrate those and expand your energetic holding capacity. You start to experience the knowing that it's safe and that you're worthy and deserving of everything that you truly desire, truly deserve. And allowing all of those things to come to you now. And slowly coming back into the room, back into your body, bringing awareness to your breath, and slowly opening your eyes. So as we start to expand our energetic holding capacity, what happens is we get to actually be who we're required to be. We all have these unique gifts that we all bring to the world. We all have these innate superpowers that only we can bring into the world. We have a certain set of experiences that creates who we are. And when we remember that you're individually, each and every one of you is here for a reason, to create something in this world. And that allows you to actually be that superhuman person, who you're required to be, to create what you're required to create, through your business, through your life. Because I believe we can create a world where everyone uses their superhuman potential and can actually step into that and allow other people to do that. And we're in the forefront of that in the fitness industry. And when we choose to step up and into that and expand what is safe for us, that gives every other person the permission to do the same. The more work that we do on ourselves allows other people permission to do the same. We become the permission piece for every single one of our clients. And all it takes is expanding what is safe for us, changing what our relationship with stress is. Thank you.
Cody, that was amazing. That was really, really powerful.